We're back again.
We are back again. Oh my God, this has been such a wild week. So, this is our third episode. And if you missed the other episodes, there's episode 1 with Professor Sophie Scott from London, who's a neuroscientist, and episode 2, Stephen Weber,
Star of Chicago Med.
who is very funny and observant. On episode 3, we have Khalil Ekulona,
The original voice of This is Nashville on NPR.
and beloved. People in Nashville for a couple of years used to plan their errands around This is Nashville so that they could hear his voice. He has an amazing story and an unexpected amazing story that most people don't know about him.
This is Nashville was a short blip of his life, but his journey revolves all around the voice in different capacities, and that's what we go into.
And he is a guy with depth and wisdom, and he has a lot of insight into a lot of things, but specifically when we talked about the humanity of that we're losing with automation, but he also sees things from different sides. So anyway, I'm excited about you seeing this episode.
And don't forget to like and subscribe and follow and share and comment and engage, and feel free to message us with who you want to see on the next episode.
Episode 3, Khalil Ekulona. I want to welcome everybody to Forever Human Voices, a show where we explore the value and the pertinence of the human voice. And today we have a human voice that pretty much all of Nashville's in love with, and probably farther than that. Khalil Ekulona, thank you for coming on the show. I wanted to have him on here because not only is his voice recognizable, but he has a quality that makes people lean in and trust. I have so many questions for you. First, you're a New Jersey guy, right? Isn't that where you're from?
Born in Jersey. And I'm born in Jersey, raised in the suburbs of Baltimore, but as my family, another New Jerseyans say, if you were born in Jersey, you're from Jersey.
You're from Jersey. You can't lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you grew up also in Maryland, is that?
Yeah, in Owings Mills, a small suburb right just outside of Baltimore.
Okay. And the other thing that I think is interesting about your background is that you have a political science degree, and you interned in Washington, D.C., and then became a journalist. Can you talk about that?
I didn't become a journalist immediately. I got into journalism in the past 10 some years of my life. I knew that I didn't want to go into politics. I wanted to go into the arts. I wanted to make music or make movies or something. I wanted to live life a little bit. So I decided not to enter into the realm of politics and started the path that I'm still on now.
You were in a hip hop group.
A hip hop group. We called ourselves Fresh Air. We call ourselves Fresh Air, where myself and one of the other founding members are in the process of maybe getting the band back together type of thing. Going to release an album sometime next year. And that was the thing that was calling me. And it had always called me. When I was young, I remember 1983 spending the summer in New York City listening to Run DMC and being moved by it. I spent summers in New York basically from 82 till about 89. And
wow.
Those were very formative years for hip hop and formative years for me. And I didn't necessarily consider it a path to go down. When I graduated high school, I thought by the time I was 28, I'd be some sort of attorney, be married with 3 kids. I'm not an attorney. I'm 52 and I have no kids and I've never been married. That's life. It shows you have your ideas and then things change around. And so,
yes, they do.
But I was always attached to it. Like, as a matter of fact, in college, my fraternity brothers used to say, if Khalil ever had a lady come over to his place on a date, he's playing Public Enemy instead of like Luther Vandross or other love music, because I loved hip hop so much. So in January of 97, I moved out to Los Angeles with my older sister, and I met a guy by the name of DJ Marv Ski, who was very much on the scene. This is a time when at the time during the scene, groups like Jurassic 5 were big. The Black Eyed Peas, they were performing, but they hadn't been signed. Like, I was in the scene when Macy Gray, Black Eyed Peas, and all these groups are getting signed, and working with Marv taught me a lot. That's how all these records, I became an audiophile collecting records, and taught me a lot about the fundamentals of hip hop. I met two good friends, Jacob Neshwat and Jay Zablon, and we formed a group called Fresh Air. And so over the next, I'd say about 10 years, we released a couple singles back when you pressed up vinyl as your singles. We released about 4 of those, released an EP. We saw some modicum of success, but then life happens. Guys get married, they have kids, people move away. And the group kind of naturally disbanded, but I've never stopped making music. After some time, I think about 12 years in LA, I decided to move. And I thought I was giving music up totally, completely. Gave away equipment, sold records back, gave stuff back. The records I wanted, I kept in about 7 boxes for myself. I think at one point in time, I had maybe 4,000 records in my collection. And it was a little pilgrimage across the country. Spent some time in Phoenix, some time in Indiana. But I spent that summer of '09 in New York City. And I was sitting on the very benches that I sat on in the 80s when I would go up there and visit. And just thinking, man, you gave it a shot. You went out there and you learned how to make this music and you tried it and you've given it up. What are you going to do with your life? But sitting on those benches made me feel that something was up. Fast forward to later that summer, I'm back in Albuquerque, New Mexico with some friends. And I had a friend who was living in Albuquerque that I met in LA. And she calls me up. I'm back for 2 days, getting my bearings. And she says, I heard you're in town. I need someone to write a verse and rap a verse on my song. Come to the studio. And I go to the studio. I do the stuff for her. There's a musician there. He had a drum machine sequencer. And I was like, oh, wow, that's the newest version of what I used to use. And he said, I have no idea how to use it. Will you take it, learn it, and teach me? I was like, sure, no problem. After about a week, and it was like top of the line at the time. After about a week, I figured out how to work it and to get done what he wanted. I called him up. Hey, man, I'll take it back to you and show you these lessons. He's like, yeah, you know what? Just keep it. I've got so much stuff. And so I thought about that. And I'm not one to, I don't believe in coincidence. I don't think it's real. I think that things happen definitely for a reason. And I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later in our conversation. But I'm sitting back and I'm like, okay, here I'm back in Albuquerque, the first place where I launched making music. After living in LA, having these experiences, giving up music, and within days, everything that I need to make music is back in my hands. Okay, God, the universe, whatever, wants me to do this. And I was really happy because I was able to explore. And my time at Fresh Air before, it was a lot of our music was like, we have to save hip hop. We have to save hip hop, because we could kind of see it going into this very, let's just call it fabricated and not positive direction. We saw it coming and we felt it, and it was out of touch with what everybody wanted. People were really beginning to get into the party style of hip hop, which is not a problem, but it just doesn't have much depth to it.
Right.
And so coming to Albuquerque, I was able to explore a lot more and let life imitate art in many ways, and through wild experiences, fun times, traumas, express that in my music. And I came up with a moniker. I called myself Pope, yes, y'all, which allowed me to explore another side of my creativity and art and my personality and things. And it was just, I was really happy for that moment. I think I also grew, and hence getting the band back together. If I'm feeling bad and I need some mental health, I'm not calling a therapist. I'm plugging in my drum machine and I'm making music. That helps out. We're working on this project.
I want to just take 1 second, because there's a lot of people that are watching this in Nashville that are looking at you going, I had no idea. And I'm sure there are some people that know that you, but what you just described, and also so much of what you just described, the synchronicity, not the coincidence, the synchronicity of your sort of next step, which really makes you understand the kind of person you are and what you brought to This Is Nashville, and why people loved going on the show and why people loved listening to the show. So it's interesting that it's not just your voice, it's the spirit of your voice, which I think is really powerful.
Sure.
So if somebody Googles Fresh Air, they're going to find some of your stuff.
You can find some of our stuff, yeah. If you Google Fresh Air / slowly coming along, you'll definitely find some of our stuff. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, did you come up with the name Fresh Air? Does that have anything to do with the NPR Fresh Air or just?
No, it didn't. It didn't. Jay and I were reminiscing over this a couple weekends ago. We're trying to figure out what we call ourselves. I had half a job. I was curating. I was working as an assistant for a woman who had a wonderful woman. Her and her partner taught my sister, my best friend, and myself basics of transcendental meditation. It was wonderful. When you're young, you just have angels that come into your life. There's the old saying, God takes care of babies and fools. And I've been both plenty of times. And Miss Sandra was an angel who came into my life. And I was working with her at her art studio. She would hang shows, and sometimes she could pay me money. Sometimes she's, all I can do is buy you groceries. I'm sorry, son. And I'm like, I still showed up all the time because it was a wisdom that I was learning from her. And Jay, we'd be sitting at his house writing our fledgling rhymes. It had no drum machine. I didn't know how to produce track the first. And a friend of ours who had substance abuse issues, and he came to the house, and he was definitely had been using. And so he was passed out in the corner, and we're going over all these lists of names. And then suddenly he wakes up and says, call yourselves fresh air, and then goes back to his nap.
Oh, man.
It was kind of so magical. We said, you know what? That fits. That's what we're going to do. Yeah. But I'd grown up listening to NPR, so I understood and knew of the show. And I'm like, we'll worry about copyright later. Let's just go with it.
A lot came before This Is Nashville and when we met you. So, yeah, tell us how that all came about.
Okay, in brief, living out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I lived across the street from a couple who were publishers of a weekly citywide magazine, think the Nashville scene type of thing. It was called the Local IQ. There were two versions. There was the Alibi and the Local IQ. And they reached out to me about being on the cover. I used to work out incessantly, and they had a health issue. So I did that, and that developed a relationship. Then some years later, my younger sister, who's a accomplished, amazing voice actress in Los Angeles, was getting married. I go out to celebrate my sister's wedding. During the receptions, at the rehearsal dinner, she's, Khalil, you're going to host the reception. And I grew up around, my siblings and I, we grew up around media. Our father was an executive producer for Maryland Public Television. They pushed us to explore the arts. So being on set, being on stage, giving speeches, all that stuff, we were trained to do. And everyone in the family was like, yeah, you hand Khalil a microphone in a crowd, it's going to be a good time. And after it was over, at the time, my Uncle Fred was alive. And he came up to me, and he used to work with Dino De Laurentiis, the film producer, the filmmaker, and said, Khalil, that was an excellent job. Now, if people may remember the sitcom Living Single with Queen Latifah in it, Erica Alexander, great actress, is a friend of my sister's. She comes running up to me. Oh my God, that was amazing. Are you a host? Do you host things? Do you live here? And her actor friends and directing friends and casting agent friends, I'm like surrounded by 15 people who were applauding me for the job that I did. And I said, guys, I moved out of LA a long time ago. You're late. And I thought nothing of it. It was wonderful to provide a really warm, loving, fun environment for my younger sister's wedding. That's all I thought of it. I fly back to Albuquerque. On the way back home, my then girlfriend picked me up. On the way back home, I get a call from the publishers of the Local IQ. There was a new television show that was starting with the local public access station. A man by the name of Larry Aarons, who was a 30-year veteran of radio, morning radio, that everybody in Albuquerque loved, had stepped away from his job a few years prior. He wanted to get back into the game, but this time doing television. They asked if I would be the music correspondent. Of course, no problem. So every Friday, you'd have me on. These are the bands you need to see. This group is coming into town. Elton John's going to be performing at the Isleta Amphitheater. Be sure you don't miss it, type of thing.
And how old are you at this time?
This is 2013, so I'm 40 at this time. And from that, their movie guy was watching me. He's, something about you. There's something about you. He calls me up. He says, hey, I just became the producer of a show called Good Day New Mexico on the NBC affiliate out there, KOB4. My host is going to be on maternity leave for 3 months. Come and audition for this gig. I have a feeling. I auditioned and I got it. At the time, I was working a few kind of odd jobs. I was working at a brewery as a server. I was working at a wonderful charter school, Amy Beale School, charter school. I was substitute teaching every once in a while, and I was teaching sitcom writing. And I was working at a really wonderful organization called Warehouse 508, where I was teaching kids hip hop production. I was doing all these things. And the idea was I'd do it for 3 months and then I'd come back to all that stuff, full-time capacity. But I told them I'm not coming back. Because the lesson that I always taught, I used to teach, I taught for a long time out in Los Angeles, elementary school, middle school, but for the length of my career in education in LA was teaching kids who got kicked out of high school. And I used to always tell them, because America, we have this fascination of make it by the time you're 25, make it by the time you're in your 20s. We force people to try to make it and achieve these certain heights before they even really know who they are. And I said, you never know when an opportunity is going to come to you. It could, what you want now at 19, 20 may come to you when you're 40. Are you going to take it? And I said, if I came back after 3 months, it'd be like, yeah, Khalil had a really nice experience. That was so cool. We saw you on TV. That's cool. And then back to the status quo. And something said, don't do that. It's a risk, but take it. And having done that, after the 2 weeks into my stay as the temporary host, the general manager calls me into his office and I'm thinking I'm going to get in trouble. And he says, the ratings have gone up since you've been on. I can't replace the host with you, but would you like to be on as much as possible? Yes, sir. That was the thing. So after my 3 months was over, I was on about maybe 5 to 10, sometimes 12 times a month coming in to do segments or hosting shows totally. And to supplement my income, I became a bartender, which opened up my schedule tremendously and made contacts. I happened to become a bartender at the Albuquerque Press Club, where the PBS folks and the NPR folks would come and have drinks.
And it's just one thing after another with you.
Yeah,
I love this.
It really is. You just go with the flow of things. And that's what it is. I remember I interviewed Amy Grant. She's got an album that's coming out and we did a podcast thing and talking to Amy Grant. And she went with the flow of things in her career. And similar, right? I felt that kinship because of that. And out of that, the NPR affiliate took a liking to me. So in late summer of 2019, they reached out to apply for a job to work for the NPR affiliate. And I got the job. And I told them, guys, I'm not a journalist. I don't know much about journalism, but I know I'm an amazing host. They hired me. Great. That's when I was filling in for Morning Edition and All Things Considered. I was also still working at 2 bars now. And I was managing working. Sometimes I would close one bar in downtown Albuquerque at 3:30 in the morning and go straight to the NPR station, KUNM, to host Morning Edition. Doing that type of thing. 6 months later, and I'm still learning journalism, still learning the basics. And 6 months later, the pandemic comes in. And they said, we have this grant. We're going to do a show that's pandemic related. So they paired me with the brilliant journalist producer, Marisa DeMarco. I was a host producer, and the two of us, with help from some of our colleagues, the two of us created first a show called Your New Mexico Government, and then we changed it to No More Normal. And it was strictly pandemic coverage. But we decided early on that anything that happened in the pandemic was pandemic related. Therefore, we covered the election of 2020 deeply. We covered the George Floyd uprising and all of the effects, because what George Floyd may have looked like in Detroit, Minnesota, or New York was very different from how it looked in Albuquerque. In March of 2021, my then boss asked me to stay after because she heard of a position opening and a gentleman by the name of John Barth wanted to talk to me. I talked to him. He told me about This Is Nashville. I talked to Anita Bug. We had a Zoom, a couple more Zooms later, application, and then I get the job and I moved to Nashville.
Wow.
That's what happened.
That is quite a run. Okay, so this is a dumb question, but I'm seeing you, the one thing that stands out to me is I'm seeing you as a bartender. You had to be the best bartender ever. I can imagine you interviewing and listening to everybody's woes and for all the reasons that people go to bars and drink.
It was something because folks have asked, journalists have asked, and particularly like students from Belmont and other universities and schools around here who listen to the show and reach out for advice. They're like, how did you get good at asking questions in this thing? There's a lot of stuff. To be an effective educator, you have to be able to ask good questions and give good direction if you're going to be an effective educator. But you also have to control and manage a classroom and keep their attention and interest. As a bartender, yes, I'm a good listener. I also have 5 siblings, 4 sisters. So I'm listening a
There you
lot.
go. Oh,
You
yeah.
know, that's part of it. And
That's a master's degree right there.
yeah, already, right? But as a bartender, you have to be able to listen to them and then ask the right question. Hey, John, I noticed that's your 5th vodka tonic. What's happening with you? What's going on?
Yeah, that's
And
beautiful.
then talk to people. And so it was all of these other things, even with music, working the audio software to be able to make clips and features and stuff. It wasn't very difficult for me to learn because I had been working with music equipment and sound and stuff for so long.
Right.
So everything I had done prepared me for what I'm doing now.
So now we're in, this is Nashville. What was your favorite part about doing this show? You had an amazing team of producers. I do know that.
Yes. My favorite part about doing the show was really talking to folks, having people come into the studio. And then when we started opening up the phone lines on Thursdays, that was the part that I loved, because you hear from the people in real time. Do you really want to know where you're at with the people? Talk to them. Open up the lines and connect with them right there. So my favorite part was having people come into the studio and talking to them, because ultimately they were doing us the favor. Yes, we had this show on at noon and it was live. The people were sometimes people brought their kids because they couldn't get childcare. People are missing work. They're doing us the favor by coming into the studio and talking about obviously something they have a lot of knowledge about or passion for. And I was always grateful that they took that time out. And so I wanted to make them feel very comfortable. I wanted to make them feel at home. I wanted to remind them that they are the folks who make this show. And then opening up the phone lines, you just get a chance. It's wild because you realize from all over Middle Tennessee, people are listening and they're responding to you. And it
was amazing. I've never seen anything like it. And I was lucky enough to be on your show. And
yes,
I was on there that when Tim Wise was there and David Dark. And it was a really amazing conversation that took place. I was really blown away. It was the first time I'd ever met you. And your ability to navigate all of these, to me, very controversial discussions, some heated, people, like you said, come in very passionate about what they're talking about. And I felt, being in your presence, I felt that everyone was respected no matter what position they held.
Oh, thank you. And, that's the thing. Respect. They have to get it.
And you have to give it. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question about the show. What was the most memorable interview, or the person that you interviewed, or persons that stays with you?
They're moments. They're moments. They're moments. The talking to the moms who got from Green Hills, who got into action after the Covenant school shooting, was a memorable thing, because sometimes after the show, I would sit with guests for a while. That door would still be closed, 10, 15 minutes, and we're continuing a conversation. I always did that when I had young people and school students on the show. I'm like, all of them, come in here, closed off. It's me talking to them. All the adults can see that I'm talking to them, but I'm telling them stuff. That was a lot of fun. But talking to those women with the door closed, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what they were doing. And I learned there's an adage that says, African adage that says, to know is to be responsible. It's something my parents taught us a lot growing up. And sometimes, in particularly the world, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, with so much suffering going on, we want people to know. We want people to understand the suffering that we're in. We want people almost to feel it so they can actually do something about it. But if I have no idea that's going on, how can I be responsible for it? Once you know you're responsible, and these women found out what life was like for everyone else who had suffered gun violence, and they're starting to do something about it. So rather than say it's about time or it's too late, no, I'm not going there. You know now, and they are doing something, and they are dedicating their lives. I remember that greatly. I remember conversations within weeks of each other talking about the great Charlie Strobel after his death. I never had a chance to meet him, but I was at tears by the end of that episode because of the love that people showed to this man who did great. And then a month later, there was a man from North Nashville named Bishop Campbell, same thing. I never met this man, but I felt that. Interviewing the great Pat Boone was a lot of fun because I know some people are like, Pat Boone, who is he? But Pat Boone was, my parents are about to be 80. Pat Boone has been famous since my folks were 10. I'm like, I'm going to talk to this legend. He has seen the world change all over so many times. Larry Gatlin was fun because I thought he was going to challenge me to do a push-up challenge. He had so much energy. I was like, what supplements are you taking, sir? Because I want to be like that when I grow up. He was a lot of fun. They allowed me to do a few hip-hop episodes. So we had a freestyle cipher at the one of the episodes. That was a tremendous amount of fun. The wild, funny, yet to some people controversial Halloween episode we did in 2023 was one of my favorites as well. The shotgun rides I used to take with people. I just hopped in a car with practically strangers and they would drive me around to their part of Nashville and Middle Tennessee and we would talk. I enjoyed that a lot. Pretty much every aspect of doing the show I really and truly enjoyed. But I'd say profile-wise, my last string of profiles, from David French to Amy Grant, Tequila Johnson, Candace Lee, the athletic director, Miriam Abu-Fazli, Jad Abunrad, so many people. It was just wonderful to sit with folks one-on-one and to begin to peel away and talk and understand who they are. It was 3 years, over 500 episodes, and I talked to over 3,000 people, I think, if we average it out.
That's stunning. So do you mind if I ask you, why did you leave? You love this job.
I do, but as given those numbers, I worked all through the pandemic. And it's something about understanding things. I'm sure we're going to talk about this later. I wouldn't be in Nashville if it weren't for the pandemic. The pandemic put me in a position to use the skills that I had attained in life and also learn new skills and be the host of a show. And I worked all through that pandemic and then came and moved here to a new city where I knew no one, not a soul. And taking this and now working all the way through, the first break I took was last year when I took that month off to go on vacation. That was the first break, the only break I had in 5 years. And I was getting tired. And
no wonder you, when I asked you to come on the show and I said, what have you been doing? And you said, sleeping.
Yes.
And I laughed thinking you were kidding.
No, sleeping. I had worked all the way through and it was so much. And I felt like, all right, where to go from here? I could try to go get myself polished up to do NPR National. I could explore some avenue of going to CNN or MSNBC or something. And then I'm asking myself, because I'm 50, do I really want to do that? I am more responsive and I make decisions based off of inspiration more so than ambition. When I was younger, I was ambitious, but I'm like, no, I have to be inspired to do something because I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to, as my mom says, I'm not going to half-ass anything. I'm going to go in and give it everything I have. And at this point in time in my life, living the life that I've had, I have to be inspired to do it. I don't care what it looks like on a resume or a LinkedIn profile. That means nothing to me.
And that's consistent with when you made the decision to not become a lawyer, to not go into Washington, you're describing the same thing as when you were 20 years old.
Yeah.
You've obviously always had this agency and this ability to listen to that deeper voice. Again, it's the voice. And it's interesting because people think, oh, he just has such a great voice. It's booming, it's resonant, it's all this. But what comes through there's a clarity and a level of compassion and heart that is in your voice. That's why I'm doing the show. Is what is it about the human voice that touches us so deeply and all facets of life, in every profession, in every endeavor? And you describing your story tells me why this town is in love with you.
I love your story because I see such similar parts where you kind of let your inner voice just take you wherever. And I was just thinking in the car today after I dropped off my dog to daycare, I was like, I really don't say no to much. As long as the opportunities that I feel like come my way are things that I've attracted. And I totally don't believe in coincidences. It is the universe for sure. And I also think that sometimes it's hard to hear the inner voice when there's so much noise going on or people telling you what to do. And it sounds like you've had a pretty supportive family, and that always helps too. But I have a few questions for you. One, I can also relate to the bartending too. So that builds people skills like crazy. And it's fun, and you learn how to really listen and think while you're doing things. So that's really fun. But one is, you've probably just heard a bunch of praise from really everyone. You're like a Nashville celebrity, like Molly was saying. But like, how do you feel about your voice? Because you know everyone else's opinion about your voice for the most part. And then what format of your voice do you love the most? You're in music, you're in TV, public broadcasting. Where does it feel like,
That's a really wonderful question. I haven't been asked that one yet. What my
yes,
voice?
That was a goal of mine.
Yeah, that I have not been asked that one yet. Okay, so we were talking about music and stuff before we got rolling, right? And if you listen to that early Fresh Air stuff, I really rapped in a higher register because I was younger and I was excited and stuff, and really trying to passionately get my point through. And doing radio, being close, it was like, oh wow, you got a nice voice. And like, yeah, I've heard that for a long time. I remember when my voice changed. I was 14 years old, sitting at the bus stop, and Chantel was there. And Chantel dated older guys, and a little bit intimidating. And he stuck like this, and she's, good morning, Khalil. And I was like, good morning. And she looks at me like, that's what I'm talking about. I was like, oh wow, my voice is beginning to change. It's funny.
I always wondered how that worked.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It just kind of happens one day. And then it kind of cracked a little bit for a while, and then it just set. In all different forms. There's different voices, like the actual timbre of my voice, it comes out differently. When I love doing radio and podcasting and stuff like that, and definitely music. I love it the most if I'm emceeing a live event or giving a speech or an address. That's the most fun for me because I'm there, and I'm sure both of you get used to, in media, you have to get used to hearing your own voice. And a lot of people feel weird about that because you do sound differently than, it's a matter of biology. You sound different to other people than you do yourself. But it's a comfortability that comes with that. And that's an acceptance. It's okay, this is how I sound. You can manipulate and change how you sound naturally, but it is how I sound, and get used to it. So I think if I'm holding a microphone in front of a crowd, that's when it's fun to play with my voice then.
How did you let that kind of guide you throughout your life? Seems like from when you were really young and now you're here and it sounds like you're not looking at the noise outside of what you should do and LinkedIn profiles. I hear that. So like where transcendental meditation you mentioned, tell me all about it.
All of those things wrapped up into one. I listen to my internal voice, but it doesn't mean I don't have other ones. My mom's from New York, and I've got 4 sisters. I've been hearing their voices for a long time in my head. Mm-hmm. There's so many other voices that you are going to hear, and that's okay. Filter them. Which one do you trust? Which ones do you feel? And I'm not saying feeling emotionally, but feeling in your body. A simple exercise. I'm hungry. Do I eat pizza or do I eat a salad? Think about eating a pizza or eating a salad. How does your stomach react? Does your stomach, when you think about pizza, begin to ache a little bit? Maybe not. Eat that. Your body will tell you what is right for you. That is something I pay attention to. So if I'm going through in a moment or I'm making a decision, yes, how does my mind feel about these things? How does my spirit feel? But how does my body feel? What does my body say about this? I remember, in fact, when I sent the letter to the bosses, hit send on that email that, hey, let's talk about me leaving the station, and this is Nashville. It felt like every cell in my body was made of peppermint because I had this effervescent feeling. And I thought, okay, you're making the right decision, Khalil. You don't know what you're going to do. You don't know what's going to happen next, but you're making the right decision. And it's really calming and trusting yourself so much to do that. This is years in the making, but it's really honed in over the past year or two. Really getting rid of the idea should or supposed to. What should I be doing? What was I supposed to do? No, I have to recognize with what happened. That really actually, it helps me deal with the reality. I call it the universal record. there's this side of story that happened. Person A, person B has their story. And then there's actually what happened. The only thing, the only entity, the only thing around that knows actually what happened is the universe. And I try to balance myself to that and find silence and answer that as honestly as possible and move with that. And so therefore I can be settled no matter what happens. It's like you go out there and you try and you listen and you're clear. And it's like I would rather go out and success or failure, nebulous terms, according to what I felt in my voice, rather than had done something and I could become 100 millionaire doing something else with my life, but not be happy at the end of it. No. When my life is over on my last day, I want to say, Khalil, you lived it the way you did and you learned from it, because I can't take any of that money, any of those accolades or any of those possessions with me onto the next realm.
You know, what's interesting is what you're describing is that when you talk about the universe, it's like person A, person B, and then there's the universe. And the universe is that neutral, that's the neutral voice. That's what has happened. And like Shakespeare says, only thinking makes it. Nothing in the world is neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. And that doesn't mean that there isn't ultimately something that's wrong or right, but there is that neutrality from whatever people call it, whether it's God or universe or whatever your interpretation. Okay, so here's what we've talked so much about, what goes into the voice, and I want to move into AI and walking in this world of synthetic voices. What is happening to human storytelling by the use of synthetic voice?
Wow. It's hard to say what is happening because it's so new in certain regards. There's been synthetic storytelling for a while, but with AI coming in, I'm working on a new project, on a podcast project, and with some partners who work in AI stuff. And we're going to use some AI in there, but we're using AI only to make certain tasks easier. But I'm not replacing anything that a human can do with AI. Human storytelling, it's weird. It's kind of how I feel about media and the craft and the profession of journalism. Is it a craft? Is it a profession? Or is it a duty? Some could say it's all three. But we see right now with what just happened to the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, PBS, NPR, losing their funding, how free can journalists and storytellers be to live up to the craft and the art and their duty when there's a bottom line to answer to? When we have commerce connected with storytelling, that to me taints it a little bit. It takes away our opportunity to be 100% expressively pure with where we're going from. And I feel like what we need is more purity. We need more expressions. People can decide what they want to decide on it. Make your judgments. Okay, that's fine. But give more people an opportunity to purely express and to share these stories, rather than worrying about crafting a narrative that will draw attention so your search engine optimization can go higher and all this stuff. It's weird. We're getting this technical flux in there because of the money. It's all because of the money.
I discovered that people are putting up podcasts where you don't see them, you hear the voices, and it turns out that they're feeding scripts into AI and choosing a voice and selecting two different voices to have a back and forth conversation with something that, and I was talking to Tay about it earlier, it appears that some of these are AI written scripts being spoken by an AI voice. I'm really curious about what is the impact of people becoming accustomed to or embracing the synthetic voice.
What's the value of it at the end of the day, too? Like, what value is lost from it? Yeah.
There's so much, because it goes to show people care about money. How can I get paid? So I'm going to use AI to develop these scripts. I'm going to use AI to get this, and I'm going to put it out there. And if people find out, okay, whatever. If they don't find out, let's go cash cow it in. What it's going to do is it's going to give people synthetic thoughts, synthetic opinions, synthetic judgments, synthetic feelings. We're also in a world where it's the hot take. What's your hot take on this? Everyone, it's not, hot takes ain't just sports. It's all forms of media. I'm like, okay, wow. Are we going to take some time and to think about stuff? Are we going to take time and to think? Like the reference of music. Somebody drops an album. Back in the day, they dropped the album. You would sit with it for a while and then make your judgment on it. If you didn't like it immediately, okay, that's fine. But you would sit with it and then talk about it. Now an album is out, and within the day it drops, people are writing reviews on it to be first. There's this push to be first. There's this push to get up ahead. Who cares what it is? We'll put out slop. We just want to be out there. We just want to get money in this fast. And it's almost as if we have commercialized and commodified connection. We have commodified story. And this is what happens. You have people who don't care about those things. Obviously, the three of us care about it, and probably the people listening and watching this podcast will care about it. But you have folks, you have operators out there who don't care about it. Therefore, they won't approach it with the same amount of integrity, the same amount of insight and foresight, and the same amount of softness and gentleness and also harshness that you need to when you're talking about stories that involve humans. They're just looking at how much money can we make off of this? If this is a success, we'll do it and sell it to somebody so I can do something else. There's a lot of that out there.
Do you think that this is a short-term trend, that this is going to shift? Is it going to be like people going back to vinyl, saying, no, we have a hunger for real voices and real conversation and dialogue? And what I observe is that AI, the way that AI is being used in some ways, I think it's very useful in terms, I've used it myself, but I feel like it not only, it does something to the curiosity and the hunger and inhibits people from wrestling with things, wrestling with our everything, wrestling with our relationships, wrestling with what we want to do with our time and our music. You wrestle with lyrics. When you're writing something, you wrestle with it. And now you can feed in half of a poem, have AI finish it, and then AI creates the music and then slaps a voice on there, and people are putting that out there.
What does the person who's designing and directing the AI to do this, what do they ultimately want? Because there is something wonderful about earning it. Again, and I believe in working smarter and not harder. So if aspects of AI can assist us in things, yes, but you don't become, I was watching a video of Prince talking about how learning the guitar, and some arguably, I believe he's one of the greatest guitarists ever. And he talked about how hard it was for him to learn that. But the beauty in learning it. When you struggle with something creatively, artistically, that growth from that struggle shows up in every other aspect of your life. That is something that helps you grow as a human being. Challenges there in the realm of politics, and something that I've come up and talked to people a lot is, we're being called to evolve. But look at biology. When does an organism or a life form evolve? It evolves when its environment is no longer suitable to support how it's been living. So it has to either evolve or go extinct and perish. And I believe those struggles help us to evolve in many ways that we go through in whatever challenge you're facing. If AI can help get a couple steps in, great. But don't use AI as a replacement of learning for yourself, particularly if it's something that you care about.
And I was talking to a friend the other day, and I've said this about social media, but it's that there are many fabulous uses for AI. And if you use AI and don't let AI use us, I think that's the chapter we're in, is not being used by it. I wanted to ask you, who is or what is the voice that makes or has in your life made your DNA swim backwards? What voice influenced you the most?
Wow, you guys have these awesome questions. I love this. As someone who is asked the questions all the time, I've been on several podcasts, particularly this year, and it's taken me some time to be the one who is answering the questions and fielding the questions. However,
how do you like it?
It's interesting. It took me a while to get used to. I'm very comfortable now, but I'm just thrilled from the questions both of you all are asking, because I hadn't been asked these at all. Wow, the voice that runs, man. That is really good. I could say something sentimental and she would totally love it if I said my mom. And that's partially true.
Apart from your mom.
Okay, taking out family members. all together. I'll take it to voices that have really meant something to me throughout the course of my life. I'd say a voice like Dick Cavett, the old school host. I like Dick Cavett a lot because he asked provocative questions and he wasn't afraid to put his foot in his mouth sometimes. And he didn't care necessarily about how he looked. And he was also, I'd say he was an innocent provocateur type. And I like that.
Wow.
Sometimes from him. I remember just watching like reruns of his episodes growing up. 11 o'clock when I'm supposed to be sleeping, the TV's not on, and I've got the tint, all the brightness all the way down low, so my parents can't see the light under there and the volume low, but I'm watching. To that end, Tom Snyder was really good. Tavis Smiley, Oprah Winfrey. I know I say that a lot. Oprah is excellent at interviewing celebrities because there's a difference when you're interviewing celebrities or a politician. They have heard every question and they know how to avoid answering questions. And Oprah is excellent at getting that stuff out of them. So watching her, and she was like the local beat reporter in Baltimore when I was growing up. I saw the first iteration of her show. So that's something very close. Are the voices that really have hit me, voices that I pay attention to now. I'll say this. Over the past several months, I've been reading a lot of Malcolm X speeches and a lot of Rumi. I feel like there's something about both of those worlds that are coming up. At least it's for what I'm doing next and what I have to share. It's read these two, synthesize that, and ingest it moreover, and then let that be a guide for you as you go about.
Is there a favorite Rumi, like a poem or a line or something from Rumi that?
Honestly, I'm just really getting into Rumi. I had known about Rumi for years, and I read a couple poems when I was 20 and maybe 30, but I kind of stayed away from it. But talking to people, they're like, man, what you're saying, we were philosophizing. They're like, wow, Rumi says stuff like this. And I'm like, wow, he should read Rumi. And I'm like, I was telling my sister this the other day, she was laughing at me. I said, they say I should read Rumi. I'm like, but if I already sound like Rumi, why do I have to read Rumi? And my sister laughed and she said, Khalil, that's so arrogant, but also something Rumi would say. And so I said, okay, if that's the case, let me pick it up and start reading what this man had to say. I have an anthology book and I just pick it up and I open it up at random. What page am I supposed to be reading today?
When something really hits you, I want you to send it to me.
I will, I promise.
Let's hear you say your favorite line to end the show.
Okay, real quick. That line comes from it's inspired from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And the line is, be good to each other, because they say be excellent to each other. And I'm like, that is it. That is the philosophy, y'all. Can we all do this? And so my little twist on it is be good to each other, everybody.
Okay, that's as far as I've got.